What accident ruined the sleepover? My wife's older sister and that sister's friend were chasing each other around the house when they were around 10 years old. They were running in a circle set up where you go from a door off the kitchen into the yard and back through a sliding glass door to the living room. Friend was chasing sister and sister slammed the sliding glass door shut. This was the 80s and the house was old by then, so this was not safety glass. Friend ran full speed into the glass door, going straight through the glass. Story goes, it was as bad as you would expect without any fatalities, with massive bleeding and hospital dash. I can't imagine being either parent on the end of that phone call. When we were growing up, one of our close friends at the time had to wear diapers because of a car crash that left him totally incontinent. We knew about it and it was fine. I mean, it wasn't his fault, some drunk idiot left him with a disability. Our friend group was really close, so we were used to his accidents and had sleepovers all the time. Well, one night, something did not sit well with him because around 2 in the morning, we all woke up to the smell of death. Poor kid had absolutely unleashed everything in his body so bad that it spilled out onto my bed. We were all gauging and trying hard not to upset him over it, but it was just too bad. I think the combination of embarrassment and the sheer scale of the mess sent him over the edge though. He ran out to call his mom to come pick him up, while the rest of us had to evacuate my room. My mom was passed out drunk by this point, so I had to gather my sheets and take them to the laundry room, while my 3 other friends picked spots out in the living room to crash. I told him he was able to take a shower while he waited for his mom, but he was too upset and just waited outside in that horrid squalor. We didn't see him for a few days after that, but then everything went back to normal. We never brought it up at any other sleepovers, but I'm sure it was always on his mind. We drifted apart over the years, but I hope he's doing well. My friend and I went for a walk in the woods with his Jack Russell Terrier. Every time I was around his dog, my eyes would itch, so I figured I must have been mildly allergic to his dog. After about an hour in the woods, we made our way back to his house. We got inside, did the usual upstart New York check yourself vortex, and sat down to play video games. Within about 5 minutes of me being in the house, my friend looks at me and says something along the lines of, "Dude, what is good with your eyes?" So I go into the bathroom and look. My eyes are almost swollen shut. It turns out that on our excursion I had touched poison ivy, and when we got to the house my eyes started itching from the dog and I rubbed my eyes. It was horrible. My dad picked me up immediately. Sleepover equals ruined. At her in elementary school I got invited to my crush's house, and while it wasn't a sleepover we were hanging all day. She gave me a lifesaver, hard round candy, but I thought it was the gummy ones. The brand had different kinds. Didn't like the flavor, so I tried to swallow it whole. Started choking on it, and her older sister had to do the Heimlich maneuver on me, to which I spewed the candy and a gloop of esophageal mucus the size of a slice of bread all over her kitchen floor. I think I died of embarrassment and never spoke to her again. I literally don't know what happened after that cause I was so flustered. I had a sleepover for my birthday. Several girlfriends were sleeping over. We woke up and one of my friends, the shy quiet one, bless her heart, was gone. Vanished from her sleeping bag. There was also a mysterious dried substance on my best friend's sleeping bag. She said, "What's this?" and scrapes and picks it off. Turns out it was vomit. There was vomit everywhere. My mom had to take her home in the middle of the night because she woke up and threw up all over herself. She tried to cover her mouth, so she had it all over her hands. She went up the stairs to get to the bathroom and touched the walls the whole way up. When she got to the bathroom she wiped her face on the hand towel, and I'll never forget the perfect face print that was left in vomit. A real work of art. The real tragedy is my mom had to clean it all up in the middle of the night after driving her home. If you're out there, Madeline, I hope it doesn't haunt you. This wasn't an accident, but my friend and I built a blanket fort under her desk and fell asleep in it. Around 2 AM her stepdad came into the room, opened the fort, and threw a glass of ice water all over us, yelling, "You're supposed to be in bed. Stop trying to hide from me." Then he saw me, took a few steps back, and apologized and told us to go to bed. I was only 9 or 10 and didn't understand what that was all about. My friend was scared and made me promise not to tell anyone, and since I didn't understand what was really happening, I kept my promise. I'm 32 now, and I regret not telling my parents about it at the time. In 4th grade, my friend was supposed to sleep over. I lived in an apartment building, and my apartment was on the 2nd floor, and my grandparents lived on the 1st floor. My grandma often picked me up from school at around 3 and my parents would come home at around 5. So I'd chill for a few hours until my parents got home. Well, school day ends. Me and my best friend are super excited to have this sleepover. We get to my grandma's apartment and I tell her we are going to have to wait a bit for my parents. This is when stuff starts to happen. We were talking for a while in the living room, doing 4th grade things, and then out of nowhere, she drops to the ground and starts shaking. I'm like, oh no, she's having a seizure or something wrongo. She then sits up very straight and pretends to not know who I am, and then pretends to be possessed. She starts trying to hit me and is talking in this voice that's super cringy thinking back on it, but I was absolutely terrified. She ended up hitting me and scratching me a few times, and I was just worriedly saying haha, name, please stop, it's not funny anymore. My grandma heard the weird noises she was making and my sad pleas for her to stop and called me to the kitchen. I told her everything that happened, and my grandma called my friend's grandma and told her she needed to pick her up right now. I didn't go back into the living room where this all happened. Then this girl had the nerve to walk into the kitchen and ask what was wrong and why was I upset. Hated her. She turned out to be very manipulative and terrible as a human in general. Cut her off in 5th grade or so. We went to the night shop to get some hot Cheetos, but forgot the keys of the apartment. It was a high building and couldn't get in. So we woke up our neighbors at 4 AM to ask if we could climb from their window to ours. Luckily the window was open. They were surprised by this, but we climbed from their window to ours while drunk with 5 bags of hot Cheetos in our hands. That was an adventure on its own. At the end we came to the realization that there was a spare key under the doormat at the front door, which we did not think about until the moment we got in the apartment, so it was all for nothing. Drunk driving accident took out a classmate that everyone knew. We were up all night betting on pool and getting drunk on bad wine, and in the middle of that someone called in saying a girl we all knew was in a wreck with a drunk driver. I was probably 16 or so, and a couple years younger than most of the partygoers. She was in their grade, and was among several deaths throughout HS where I knew the sibling much better than the one who died. It always happened to someone everyone would miss a lot, and usually involved them driving. This is one of the many reasons I slowed down and started driving more conscientiously. I was in middle school sleeping over at a friend's house when the worst pain of my life stared in my abdomen. I thought my appendix burst or I don't know what. I woke their mom up and she drove me home instead of to the hospital. To make a long story short, it turns out that I was just constipated. I'm still friends with the family over a decade later, and trust me, they still remember that night very clearly. Pretty embarrassing. When I was 7 years old, I went to sleep over at a friend's house. The day was a bit strange. We had played outside all day, then decided to take a shower together in our bathing suits. She accidentally pooped in the shower while I was turned the other way. I was beyond grossed out, but she claimed her stomach hurt and she couldn't help it. Sure, okay, I was 7 so whatever. Later that night, I had finished getting ready for bed, and I was getting ready to lay down. We were sleeping in her bed. She pulled back the covers to show me that she was totally nude and told me she wanted me to sleep nude too. I immediately left the room and had her mom call my mom to pick me up. Luckily I only lived about 10 houses down the street. Somehow, I never saw her again. Around age 10, I had a friend on the block who had every Nerf gun you could imagine. He even had the purple Nerf crossbow that fired these huge yellow darts. All the kids on the street are sleeping over at his place and naturally we plan a house-wide Nerf war. My friend is running down the stairs and I raise up the crossbow to shoot him. As soon as I fire, he slips backwards sliding down the last few steps putting his eye level with this massive yellow dart I fired at him. His screams of pain ended the Nerf war pretty quickly. Everyone got sent home and I was never allowed over to their house again. I'm not sure how bad I injured him, I just know he had to wear an eye patch for a few months and started wearing glasses all the time after. New kid moves to our school, invites me and a bunch of other random kids to his house in an attempt to make friends. I suspect his parents or a teacher suggested it, as now I look back he wasn't that enthusiastic about it. We were about 14 I think at the time. All 6 of us had to cram into this kid's tiny bedroom, the sort that fits a single bed against one wall, a TV and wardrobe against the other, and a small corridor down the middle. There was barely enough space to sleep, but his mum said we had to spend the entire sleepover there, so we sorta had to pile up in our sleeping bags for an incredibly uncomfortable night. He barely spoke to any of us, and he basically played Digimon on his PlayStation whilst we messed around to entertain ourselves. His mum bought us up a big plate of chips and nuggets, and for some reason we decided to shove the stuff we didn't eat through the cracks in the bare floorboards, as he didn't want his mum to see leftovers. This kid also had a younger brother, about 10, who was desperate to be involved and kept coming into the room and mimicking his older brother for some reason. Everything he did he copied to the point where it was kinda creepy. He then followed his older brother into the toilet and somehow pissed down his older brother's leg. This then resulted in a fight breaking out between the two and the kid's mum absolutely screaming at them and kicking them as they rolled round on the floor. Then she took the kid's light bulb and game controllers and demanded we all sleep. It was like 8 PM, if I remember correctly. My friend was playing with my younger brother, who was about 3 or 4 at the time. She was chasing him around the house and she pushed him a little too hard, and he fell face first on the corner of our brick fireplace. This was so many years ago, but it still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. He had a huge gash in his forehead, and while we were in the car taking him to the hospital, I remember his little voice asking my mom if his eyeball was in. My god, that was the most horrific night of my life. But he was able to get stitches and was all fine. He just turned 19 last month. A high school friend of ours had a sleepover in our junior year for her birthday. There was about 10 of us, and for the most part we were all having a lot of fun. Since there were so many of us, we were all gonna camp out in the backyard with tents and wanted to hang up some lights. My best friend was helping set up the lights and holding them as they extended with her bare hands. I guess one of the bulbs was broken, and for some reason, someone plugged them in and turned them on. She started screaming at the top of her lungs that it was electrocuting her. When someone unplugged it, she dropped to her knees and started crying. The skin in the middle of her index finger was melted, and she was absolutely terrified. She wanted to go home, and I went with her and stayed at her place for the night to make sure she was okay. I guess after we left, everyone just felt bad and didn't have much fun. One time in elementary school I wasn't invited to the popular girls sleepover, let's call her Sue. She had been bragging all week about how awesome the part was going to be, how cute her new puppy was, and made a point to say how everyone was invited while she had directly told me I wasn't. So the weekend finally comes. Things happen, and on Monday I see everyone is giggling behind their hands, and Sue looks extremely sullen. We would estimate our school basically forced a buddy system on us to, I guess, minimize the bullying. It didn't help, FYI. So I overheard what happened when she was talking to her friends. Apparently, the fools left their puppy in the room with them and hadn't let her out while they were doing whatever, and when they were settling down for the evening the kids realized all the sleeping bag was soaked with pee. I remember at the time trying not to laugh so hard it hurt. I do feel bad for the dog though. When I had no other choice, my parents enrolled me in summer church camp. 1 week being controlled by a bunch of youth pastors and volunteers who probably had the right motivation, but horrible information. Every year of my 3 years attending they tried to have a single night to camp out. First year we were rained out. Lightning storm hit hard. Can't really camp in that. Third year I had passed out from heat stroke and was sent home early. But that second year was magical in all the wrong ways. To note, the camping area was in a wide valley about 10 minutes drive from Lakeside, where the cabins and cafeteria were. For the 3 girls they set up a 12-person tent. It had ventilation slats, all the fancy bells and whistles, and when staked down the wind hardly ever bent it in half. For the 6 of us boys and 1 camp counselor we were packed into a 2-person tent, a cheap blue one that was fine enough for a single person. But lo and behold, we ate campfire grilled chicken that night. The only counselor watching us thought they knew their stuff. but didn't cut open everyone's chicken to make sure it was cooked. Sure enough, one kid got violently sick near bedtime. To be fair, we had a spider infested porta potty that was never moved from the campsite in many years. They were hurling and shitting and scream crying. The counselor was in tears trying to call the admin office on their radio because it was nightfall and they'd misplaced the keys to the bus. Long story short, we all were forced to bunk in with a kid who was quietly sobbing and retching into a few stacked Walmart bags throughout the night. It smelled like fesses and sweat, unwashed boy smells that happen when you're not able to shower in a state that's humid percent 90 of the year. Kid wasn't allowed to go home early. They held him in the nurse's office and we had dedicated prayer time for their recovery. Fun times.